Dear colleagues, thank you for this opportunity to present my work. And you may notice that its title has changed, and I will explain in my presentation why. And to give you some context on what you will see, this is my work on my future PhD project. And at this time, it's at the stage of just writing up a project proposal. So it's really about my observations and some conceptual ideas that I have on how to make it more academic. So at this stage, your comments will be really useful, and I will really appreciate if you ask me questions or you say that something was good or something was not that clear. I really believe in positionality of knowledge, so I can only see, I can only observe things from my perspective, and that's why I want to tell you a bit how I got interested in this topic. So first, I started hearing feminist ideas in my circles in around 2014. But at that time, it was mostly radical feminists who were active, and I did not really want to identify with them. Around 2017, this nice person created a chat on Russian social media platform Vkontakte for women who identified as feminists. And I also joined that chat, after which I became friends with many of them, and you can see some fun pictures of moments we had together. And from this moment, I started also calling myself a feminist, and I still do. So this is where I was kind of observing Russian feminist community from. And of course, I was not only observing as a regular person, but I was also thinking about it through some concepts. And here are some concepts, ideas which inspired me. The first one is discourse theory, and especially the theory of identity that it has within it. I'm really interested in how identity works, and this theory provides tools to look at it from a macro societal perspective. So not only looking at interpersonal interactions, which some theories of identity allow you to do. The second set of concepts is uniprogressive discourse, which Olga Baisha says is characteristic of Russian activists who call themselves progressive, democratic, liberal, and whatnot. And she claims that actually they try to write Russia into the model of Western modernity, which it, of course, does not correspond to, and therefore it is lagging behind. And the role of these activists is to bring Russia to this nice, modern, enlightened condition. Also, there are works which are saying that many feminists in Russia are also engaged in this activity, in this kind of self-colonizing activity. And this is actually why I changed the title of the presentation, because before it had feminism as contestation of Russian neotraditionalist gender order. And neotraditionalist is, of course, also kind of from a Western modernity perspective. So I would not like to bring these ideas into my research without reflection. And that's why I changed my focus to really how identity works. And the next set of concepts, which are, of course, really different: suffering, trauma, affect, desire, are also important to me because they relate to embodiment. So these are concepts relating to some states, which of course we can rationalize somehow, but they happen, they just arise in us without any without our rational wish that they would arise. In this sense, I'm really interested in Lacan's concept of the subject, who desires, and it is a very important driving force for human beings. And I think many why people are so passionate about some identities, some discourses, we cannot even explain that well without looking at this this aspect. And also in empirical data, when looking at feminism, we can see that it's very much about sympathizing with suffering of other women and acting to finish this suffering. So it somehow feels important to what I'm interested in. And now I will show you some pieces of data, like some screenshots of communication, which I found most interesting and relevant to my research interest. And the first part relates to exclusion versus inclusion when constructing feminist identity. And the first example is from a radical feminist community. When you, it's an online community, so you enter their page and you see this, this message. And it is explaining shortly their ban policy, and you can see that many subjectivities get here a ban, like men in skirts, so you rule out trans feminism, zombie men lovers, so whoever justifies men's actions in any situation is also ruled out, queers, whatever. Social justice warriors is especially fun because many would say that radical feminists are also social justice warriors, but that's, yeah, very interesting. But what interests me here is that from the beginning you get exclusion of many people who could potentially in other situations be like allies. And a radically different situation is in another feminist community, and they say in their rules that we do not support any strand of feminism. She, which is the title of the organization, supports working together with feminists of different strands while preserving their own views and agendas. So there is an explicit attempt to unite feminists of different strands here. Another thing is Uniprogressivism, and I collected some screenshots, but while I was just looking and surfing the internet for a while, there were better examples, but this is just what I found for this presentation. And one of them is from a discussion on domestic violence, which says, the comment says that traditions of domestic violence are safeguarded by all branches of government. So domestic violence is understood as part of the traditional system, which is opposed to modern system. And another example of this, there is a lot of text, but I translated just one part. The context is the social networking platform Vkontakte started to ban communities for hate speech. This is a discussion in a feminist group that another feminist group was banned, was closed. And they're saying, well, still the same people are in the technical support of VK, and we should not expect any progressive views from them. So not banning a feminist community, even though things can happen there that can be classified as hate speech, to be honest, they are classified as not progressive. Like banning a feminist community is not progressive. So, I mean, it is somehow relates to what authors are writing about uniprogressivism. And the last part is about effects and making of enemies, adversaries, or allies out of different groups. And the first thing that I found really striking, it was published in one of feminist chats on Telegram about Weinstein. So the sentence to Weinstein is the end of Me Too. Victims got power and turned into executioners, which of course can be kind of read as empowering, but it's also some symbolic like justification of violence, like imagining yourself as an executioner. And I also think it relates to affect, because I mean, harassment is what many women can relate to and can understand, that like can sympathize with, can also feel this pain of having such behavior, experiencing such behavior. And when we have this affect, it's kind of easy to go into making of enemies and imagining yourself as executioners of some enemies. And a different situation can be observed in other spaces. For instance, there are some examples from a community called Unsafe Space, who are really they really like to call for egalitarianism. So to say that if we stay within feminism or within masculinism, which, by the way, is getting stronger in Russian online, in the Russian online sphere, then it does not work. But we should work together. We should see how we can cooperate. We should see like feminism and masculinism as different branches of anti-sexism. And here men become already, well, maybe adversaries, but also allies in a common struggle against sexism. From these empirical observations, I have made some research questions. So I'm interested in how feminist identities are formed in Russian feminist online communities, what role affect plays in this identity building, and how uniprogressive elements are embedded in these feminist identities. And in order to answer them, I think two theoretical models are especially important for me. This is the first one, the model of discursive identity construction. And it is in line with discourse-theoretical understanding of how identities work. And it is, the picture is from Georg Glaser, who I think did a very good job of illustrating this. And the red parts are mine. I just put them here to illustrate some of my thoughts. And the idea is that like subject positions inside this field can be allies or friends, and outside enemies or adversaries are from Nico Carpentier. So how this works is that we have in the middle an empty signifier of feminism around which a community can be structured, and chains of equivalence with other subject positions are established. For instance, a transgender person can be a friend, or a worker can be ally. So we are still different, but we kind of work for the same purpose and against common like enemies or adversaries. So outside this antagonistic border, we have either adversaries, like a cisgender man in the case of like egalitarianism and working against anti-sexism, working against sexism, And a rapist for Me Too would be probably an enemy. And an important distinction that I also want to make is between antagonistic and agonistic discourses. So in antagonistic discourses, a radical difference between self and other is established. And in agonism, we see conflictual togetherness, which is also kind of close to enemy versus adversary distinction. In antagonism, there is a homogenization of the self, which I think I'm observing in the radical feminist community, where, like, where
5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. So in the radical feminist community, we can see that almost everyone is excluded, and there is just a really small and homogeneous group of people who can be inside this struggle with radical feminists. And in many other cases, the self is more pluralized. And in antagonism, enemy destruction is presupposed, either symbolic or, in the worst cases, like material. And in agonism, there is peaceful and non-violent interaction. And I think here is where affect plays a really important role, when we already have some, like, we cannot escape categorization. So we will probably stick with, like, men and women for a while in the society. But when there is affect at play, when we have men who are adversaries, so we understand as women that we're different from them, but we can live with them, we can reason with them, whatever. But then we have a victim of male violence, and we can sympathize as women with this victim. And it's really easy to jump from this understanding of men as adversaries to understanding of men as enemies. And it's always there, because categories won't go away, whether they're based on gender or any other category. So I think this is really interesting and important, and I want somehow to address this in my work. And how exactly I'm going to do this? Well, the method I want to use is discourse-theoretical analysis, which very nicely connects concepts of high discourse theory, which are often, like, philosophically used really philosophically, to procedures of qualitative research, which I'm kind of familiar with because I am trained as a sociologist. And the data that I'm going to use, I'm thinking about looking at 3 or 4 case studies, where I could find different ways of constructing identity. And the first one will definitely be Your Horrible Lady, which you saw. It was the first screenshot, because they're just very interesting. And then I'm still thinking what other communities I will look at, and maybe I won't even decide before I do the first part, so that I have this so the project grows and I don't decide too many things beforehand to just close off important like possibilities that may arise after some analysis. And that is basically everything that I wanted to show you. Thank you very much for your attention.